Howdy, sports fans, are you good? Good. The PlayStation 5 has already promised plenty in the months since release, with solid exclusives and a very exciting upcoming slate. Should that slate include new Resistance and Killzone games, however? Yes it should. Let's explain why. Now, it's no secret that Sony's PlayStation 4 walked away with a fictional crown last console generation because of its lineup of games that you can't find anywhere else. That and its main competitor having just about the worst reveal in history, it basically being the living embodiment of that stick in the bicycle meme. Though, judging by how the Xbox One famously struggled with its exclusivity, the PS4 is likely still to have been the more attractive option for many, even if Don Matrick never took his fatal steps to the stage at E3. The success of the PlayStation 4's exclusives comes down to a simple set of principles. With large production budgets to play with and time afforded to developers that they need to make the best game they can, the PS4 has built up an impressive library of games over the past 7 years, particularly in the last 2 or 3. Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War and Marvel's Spider-Man are some of the biggest successes, not to mention Tsushima and Days Gone. All of these games have something more than just their platform in common, however. They're all third-person open-world games. Okay, not strictly true for God of War, but still, let me have it. A formula that seems to be serving Sony very, very well indeed. It's a formula they've discovered the hard way. The first 2 years of the PS4's life were rocky in terms of exclusive games, to say the least. Killzone Shadowfall, while not a bad game by any means, and actually really quite a good game, was more of a technical showcase than the must-play franchise it was on the PS3 and PS2, though technically they were still pretty tilted towards showing off the power of their systems. Being burdened with showing off the console's gimmicks hasn't helped Shadowfall age all that well either. The Order 1886 meanwhile didn't really know what it wanted to be, a Gears of War clone or a barely interactive movie. It had all the right elements but just couldn't quite stretch the distance. Knack was also a video game released earlier on in the PS4's life, and that's all I will say about Knack. Channel fans know that we stand Knack 2, not the first game. Fast forward to 2015 and the likes of Bloodborne started paving the way for Sony to really start coming into their own with the PlayStation 4, and the hits just kept coming after that. They had finally found their groove, the games that their audience wanted to play. Sony showed their hand in a big way at their E3 2016 conference, a cavalcade of reveals so huge that they propped up the console for years to come. Looking back through lists of the best PS4 exclusives, you will notice the same type of games creep up over and over again: third-person open-world games. Now, you can't blame Sony for sticking with what isn't broken, but there's a surprising lack of one of the most popular and influential genres in gaming history in their lineup: the first-person shooter. Now, this is pretty crazy when you realise it, but there's only just been a single entry in the FPS genre if you exclude PSVR games on PS4, and that's the aforementioned Killzone Shadowfall, and that was a launch game. Helgens and Vetkans have almost become as synonymous with all things PlayStation as much as an orange marsupial did in the early days of the brand, so it should be no shock to see it also make an appearance on the PlayStation 4. It is a bit of a shock, however, to see that it's still the only FPS representative, almost 7 years after the console launched. 7 years! Sony have gone all in on trying to create a Halo killer in the past, with mixed results. Killzone was touted as being one of them, though it never reached the same heights of popularity. Resistance was another, with it sadly going on to be criminally overlooked as a franchise that came into its own the older it became, though does seem to be oddly rather forgotten about these days. Pretty strange considering that it's a series that has shifted millions of copies. Now then, how's this for a flashback? Haze. Wow. Does anyone remember that one? Anyone at all? Anyone? 10 points if you do. 10 points to Gryffindor if you do. Anyone? Let me know. Down below, please. Anyone for Haze? Anyone? Haze? Anyone? Was probably the most infamous, with it being routinely panned at launch, though there's more to its failure than first meets the eye. These relative disappointments, as well as the shifting tides of player taste, may have steeled Sony against going down the FPS route so heavily in the last generation. Open world games have been in vogue for what feels like forever now, so Sony have been smart to adopt the approach for a large part of their output. There's always room for an FPS game though. Their backlog of dormant franchises might hold the answer. We've most recently seen Killzone on the PS4, as well as Guerrilla being hard at work on the new Horizon, so that one's sadly not all that likely. Resistance meanwhile has been AWOL for the better part of half a decade, but it still has plenty of stories it could potentially tell. Halo 4 shows that the end is not always the end after all, and Insomniac are now a first-party Sony studio, and while they're pretty busy with other games at the minute, they've also proven to be pretty great at juggling multiple projects. And hey, if Sony really want to keep to open worlds, how about Resistance 4, but a post-apocalyptic open world FPS, kinda like Rage 2, but people won't forget it in 5 minutes. And hey, while we're here and going just a bit nuts, why not SOCOM? It could arguably work even better in first person than third, like a more open and expansive version of Rainbow Six Siege. Or, you know, if they just want to give me a new SOCOM game in third person, that's fine. Basically, what I'm getting at here is just give me a new SOCOM game. Thank you. Or Sony could try a new FPS franchise altogether. Sony have shown that they are willing to stick with what works, but they also aren't afraid to take some risks either. The likes of Dreams aren't what you would call conventional fare, and the PS5 has launched with a pretty broad selection of exclusives from different genres. All that said, they have been hurt by putting too much stock in FPS franchises in the past, but it might be time to adopt them again in a big way to prove that they aren't just about over-the-shoulder action in their blockbusters. Failing that, make a gritty reboot of Knack and send him to Vietnam. Actually, you know what? Can someone get Sony on the phone, please? Yes, Sony. I've got an idea for them. They might like this one. So there you are then. There are just a few of our thoughts on Resistance and Killzone possibly coming back on PS5. What do you reckon? Would you like to see these games making a return? If so, let us know down below. And thank you for watching.